This isn't about pro level gear or people that play in junior hockey. This is about beer league level pads, beginner budgets, and making smart upgrades that are actually going to help you out. So the premise that I'm going to start with this is gear that you should be spending your money on, gear that you can definitely save your money on, and then kind of everything else. Go through those things and explain why on each of those. All right, first up, where to spend your money. The things that I think are most important to spend money on, and also things that I think are most important to get name brands on. There are, people know the big name brands for hockey. You've got your CCMs, you got your Bauers, you got Warriors out there, the big brands you see everywhere. There are a lot of smaller brands that are out there that are very good, make a lot of good stuff. But in this category, I'd stick to name brands and brands that you know. I would stick to probably getting newer stuff if you can afford it, hopefully. But this is where I think the bulk of your budget should go. Number one, most importantly, helmet. Helmets do wear out. The padding inside wears out. So I'm not just talking about like if they crack or something. The padding inside eventually wears out. And once that padding starts to wear out, they're not useful anymore. They're not really protecting your head. So used helmets are very, very tricky to decide if they're good or not, because the padding might look okay, might even feel all right, but not be that protective. And honestly, your brain's the most important thing you should be protecting out there. And any kind of fall or any kind of hit you take that bounces your head around, you want as much protection as you can get. I know helmets don't protect everything against any kind of, trauma to the head or stuff like that, but I would think play it safe as best you can. Helmet, probably the place you should be spending the most of your money. The bulk of your budget should be going to that. And used helmets, like I said, are iffy. And that also goes for like new old stock helmets. So if you're looking at like a pro stock or something like that, if it's older, those foams and stuff in there start to decompose over the years. So even if it's never been worn, but the helmet's kind of old, not probably going to be the most protective thing you can get out there. Also with helmets, you got to try them on. You really got to try them on and make sure that they fit properly. You don't want a helmet that's too big because it's going to be flopping around. You don't want a helmet that's too small because it's going to hurt putting it on. You're going to get terrible headaches from wearing it, and it's going to be uncomfortable. But you also have to make sure that the helmet fits your size of your head. Everybody's heads are shaped a little bit differently. You have like kind of more oval shaped heads versus very round heads, big heads, small heads, all different kinds. Different helmet brands and different lines of helmet fit differently. So take your time, try on different helmets, find one that fits and adjusts properly to fit your head correctly. And also, if you're playing beer league, hopefully you're wearing some kind of face protection, hopefully like a full cage or a bubble or something like that. Or at very least, if you're playing high level, a half shield. Make sure that your helmet, it fits with that, because they're not all compatible. Every shield, every cage does not fit every helmet. Now, if you buy them together, perfect, you're good to go. But make sure that those fit together properly if you're going to do that. And then if you're going to like upgrade to another helmet or switch helmets, if you're looking to go, hey, my helmet's old, I'm going to get a new one. Something to think about. Just because you have, a cage that you have on your helmet now, it might not fit if you buy a new helmet that's a different manufacturer. Or even the same manufacturer, it might not fit properly. So make sure you try that stuff out. The other thing that I think you should be spending money on, a little bit lesser extent than helmets, but still, skates. A decent pair of skates. And now you don't need top of the line skates by any means, especially if you're a beer leaguer, especially if you're starting out. If you're starting out, kind of the very top tier skates can be actually detrimental to you, because a lot of those top tier skates are very, very stiff. And if you're starting off, that can really be difficult to skate with. So I would say generally avoid the very top tier skates just in general for beer leaguers. I'd also avoid the bottom tier skates. I'd avoid the weird brands of skates because you don't know how they're going to last or if they're going to be any good. But kind of that mid tier is, I think, where you should be shooting for. Mid tier skates, higher mid tier if you want, but shooting for those, I think is a super helpful way to go. Now, skates are a great place where you can also buy something used. You can get a slightly worn in pair of skates. I say slightly worn in. You don't want to get skates that are completely trashed, obviously, but you can get a worn in pair of skates that can still be very usable and very good, especially for beginners. It's a good way to get a decent pair of skates for a cheap amount of money. Now, when you're looking at those, one, like I said, make sure they're not trashed. You know, the outside of the skate is in decent enough shape and they're not super flimsy, because that means they're super worn out. Make sure everything is nicely, tightly connected on them. You know, nothing is loose anywhere. You don't want that. Also check all the eyelets. Always check the eyelets for used skates and make sure they're not pulled out, because that can lead to other issues down the road that you don't want to have to deal with. Now, if you are looking at some skates and you're thinking you might want to upgrade some skates that you have, or you're looking at some used skates, something you should definitely pay attention to is the runners, the steel that are on the skates, and also the holders, and see what kind they are. See what, brand they are, what kind of versioning they are of them, and if you can change out the steel. Because you can get some older skates where you get them used, they're in decent shape, but the steel is completely worn down and unusable, but you can buy some new steel and then they're totally fine. Or maybe you get ones and you have to replace the entire holder that's on there. I've done that on my skates. Most good hockey shops can do that. It's not a super expensive process, and it's a great way to extend the life of your skates beyond kind of what they would normally be able to be. So, bulk of your budget, spend on good helmet, spend on decent skates, but you can definitely save money buying some used skates. Used helmets, very iffy. Now, places where I think you can definitely save some money and not really sacrifice anything. Number one, hockey bag. Especially if you're new to hockey, you can get nice fancy bags. They are super helpful. They have, not lots of nice compartments and different ways to carry them, and, like backpack straps or wheels or all kinds of stuff like that. Really nice. They can look cool. But really, if you're starting out, you can just get a burlap hockey bag. Like a lot of people that I know that play beer league still have bags from, high school, and they are really just giant duffel bags. And that's all they are, nothing else. And they work. They kind of work till the straps fall off or the zipper breaks. You can find those all kinds of places. It doesn't have to be hockey related. You can find them at a camping supply store. You can find them used all over the place. But you can do that. And that is a great way to save money, especially when you're starting off in hockey. Another place to save money, and I think people aren't going to love this, but hear me out on it, sticks. Low-level beer leaguers, we're not using the full potential of our sticks. We're just not. We're not using all the whippiness of the stick or getting all the use out of the proper kick points and stuff like that. We're just not. So it's kind of silly to spend a ton of money on expensive top-of-the-line sticks. It really is. Beginner beer leaguers, if you're just starting off in your hockey journey, buying expensive sticks, I think it's just dumb. Buy cheap sticks. If you're just starting in hockey, I think find the cheapest sticks you can that are about the height you think they are, because one, you're not going to care what happens to them because they're cheap sticks and you can go through them. Two, it gives you the chance to find out what you like in a stick. If you're just starting off, you might not even know if you're a righty or a lefty. Buy one of each. Try them. Buy some cheap sticks and try that out. See which way feels more comfortable. See what you kind of like for a curve. Get an idea on that. See if you like a stiff stick, if you like a whippy stick. See how tall you like them. There's a lot of different ways to measure stick height and what people have them at, but it is a very personal preference for everyone. So I recommend, if you're starting off, get cheap sticks, go to the bargain bin, pull them out, try those out. Get an idea of what you like before you invest a couple $100. Because at this point, even mid-tier sticks are like $150, $200. And you don't want to be getting one of those and, try it out for 2 open skates or something and just realize, oh yeah, you know what? I like a much taller stick, or, oh, this is completely the wrong flex. It's not worth it. So especially if you're starting off, cheaper sticks. And more experienced players, I would say the upgrade path on sticks doesn't necessarily have to be upgrading by paying more money, but upgrading by getting sticks that are what you like, learning your preferences and getting stuff that fit more of how you like to play and what you're looking for from your stick. In all seriousness, very beginner players, you're not going to be really screwed up getting wooden sticks. You can still find wooden sticks. They're dirt cheap. If you're truly, truly a hockey beginner, I see nothing wrong with trying wooden sticks and just kind of getting used to stuff. Especially if you're like going to be stick handling, in your house or in the driveway or something like that to try out hockey. And this really is the first time you're playing. I think that is a great way to start. They are way cheaper than composite sticks. And you can try, like I said, try righties and lefties and kind of get used to it and see what you want your stick to do that it's not doing. And then when you go spend $100, $125 for kind of the low level composite sticks, you have a better idea of what you're looking for versus just grabbing one off the shelf and hoping. Finally, the last place where I think you can save some money is gloves. Now, gloves, I think, are a great thing to buy used, but you really have to inspect them, and especially inspect the palm of the gloves. Some people I know don't care if the palms are super worn out on their gloves. I know people that play with gloves that they've had for 20 years and there's almost no palm left. It's almost just bare hand there. That's fine. If that's what you like, go for it. But for beginner players, I wouldn't recommend that. Definitely wouldn't recommend that. But you can find tons and tons of used hockey gloves that are in really good shape of all different brands, all different sizes, all different colorways. So I definitely recommend checking out used gloves. And again, like everything else, different brands have kind of different sizing, different model lines within the brands have different sizing, different ways they work of like longer cuffs, shorter cuffs, how the padding is on, the top of the hand versus the padding that's for the fingers, how many cuts are kind of in the fingers for how flexible you can be and stuff like that. All the gloves are different. So I think especially for true beginners, cheap gloves that just fit, see what you like, see what you don't like. For more experienced beer leaguers, I do think gloves is a way that you can definitely save a little bit of money. You can upgrade to really nice, expensive gloves, but I don't think you necessarily need to. I don't know that it makes that much of a difference in beer league to have expensive gloves. Unless you want to have fun colors, then you can definitely do that and go all out and get all custom stuff. But I think that is definitely a good place to save some cash with a pretty easy upgrade path, because gloves are, again, because you can find so many used, and as people buy them, that means you can get gloves. If you don't like them, you can easily sell them off, I'm sure, and get some money back for them to get gloves that fit more of what you want. Okay, now kind of into the everything else category, kind of the middle tier of stuff that you can spend more money on. And I think it does get you a better product that does help a little bit, but you can also save money here. So I don't think it's a clear cut spend money or don't spend money here. It's really a personal preference. And this is really the bulk of your padding. So like shin guards, expensive shin guards, they probably have a more comfortable like knee cup for you. They're also going to have better protection for if you're blocking shots, which if you're in your beer league, probably not doing that. So probably doesn't matter, but also have better protection for like wrapping around the back of your leg. If that's something that you care about or worry about, more expensive shin guards are going to do that. Shin guards, also a great thing to buy used. Actually, all these are great things to buy used if you can find them. Elbow pads. The biggest thing with elbow pads is make sure they fit properly. For some reason, elbow pads are like the super finicky pad that I don't know if anyone ever has a perfect elbow pad that fits properly and stays on properly. So try out a lot of different ones. Get ones that actually, fit your elbow properly, but move your arm around, bend your elbow and everything and make sure that they stay in place. There are elbow pads that are great as long as your arm is bent, but as soon as you straighten your arm out, they slide around like crazy. Now, kind of your undergarments can help with that sometimes. You can tape them. It's a lot of tricks you can do, but if they're doing that right away when you're trying them on, not good. But yeah, elbow pads. Try them on, try different brands, try different styles, try older ones, try newer ones. It's really like I said, elbow pads are like the most finicky pad, I think, for any kind of skater out there that, generally never fit quite right or move way too much. As you kind of go up your levels of elbow pads, you're going to get more flexibility with them, so they will flex properly, like more anatomically with you. The more your cheaper elbow pads will usually be bulkier. They'll usually be a lot bulkier, which can be kind of a pain in the butt, putting jerseys over and stuff like that. So maybe you're less likely to wear them. I think elbow pads are an essential thing because, especially in beer league, you're going to fall, you're going to get knocked over. I want to have padding on my elbow. So that way if I land on my elbow, I'm not doing a bunch of damage to it. Because if I'm falling over and the first thing that hits the ice is my elbow, that's not going to be fun. You have elbow pads on. Hopefully you're just getting bruised up and that's it. So I think elbow pads are super important. But yeah, that's something to try a bunch of different ones on. Used, definitely can do it. Probably middle tier pricing on those. Most expensive ones, great, do awesome stuff. Probably don't need that. Cheapest ones, usually super big and bulky and uncomfortable, and then you're probably not going to wear them. Speaking of pads, a lot of beer leaguers don't wear shoulder pads. Shoulder pads are such an array of things with beer leaguers. If you're starting off, I definitely think you should have shoulder pads, because if you're starting off, you're going to fall. People around you are going to fall. You can't control that. Have as much padding as you can to stay safe. As you progress through beer league, you'll see there are people that don't wear shoulder pads because they don't think that they need them. That's fine. I mean, there's not really checking in beer league generally, so you can usually get away with it. I like the idea of wearing shoulder pads because I like to be protected in case I fall, or like I said, people around me fall. It happens, and I don't want to get hurt. Biggest thing with shoulder pads, make sure that they not only fit properly, like sitting on you and sitting on your shoulders, but that the front and back of them come to where you want to be protected. There is very different levels of shoulder pad protection for like your chest and back. Some shoulder pads will kind of just look like football pads and really just have like shoulder caps and barely protect anything else. Just kind of protect your shoulders and, your clavicles and a little bit on the front and back, and that's it. Some shoulder pads are made to go all the way down to your hockey pants in the front and the back. Some have a bunch of extra back protection to protect the spine. So all different levels that are there, all different styles of protection. And that style of protection doesn't really correlate with price. There are cheap shoulder pads that have lots of padding. There are expensive shoulder pads that have not a lot of padding, but it's a little bit better padding in there. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for with that. But that's where I think you don't have to spend a lot with them, but get ones that fit you properly, but also fit how you want your pads to be and where you're expecting to be protected at. As you go up in price, your shoulder pads, much like all the other pads, you're going to get more flexible padding. Everything's going to be more flexible. It's going to be a lot more separate pieces that move around on you. Also, as you get more expensive, you're going to get them usually kind of more customizable. So as you go real up in price, you get pads that have different parts of the padding that can come on and off very easily. That's something you can do as well. You can usually snip off pieces of shoulder pads. That's a very common thing for people to kind of customize if they don't want to have as much shoulder padding as they have, especially in beer league. If you just want to kind of have the chest protector and the back protector and you have like a shoulder cap, then they usually have like a upper arm protector as well. A lot of people get rid of one of those because they don't feel they need them both. So that is a way you can also customize kind of a more mid-tier level of shoulder pads. But then if you want that protection back, you got to sew that back together versus the high level shoulder pads that might have ways to attach and detach that stuff. Finally, pants, hockey pants. I mean, it's, I think most hockey pants are generally about the same. I don't think it's worth spending a bunch of money on them. I don't think super cheap hockey pants really last very well. They will get ripped and cut up very easily. Whereas you get out of the very bottom tier, I think you're fine. I think you're probably fine for the amount of protection they have in there. As you go up in price point of most hockey pants, what you will get again is some more padding, some more anatomical padding around So you might get better padding on weird spots, like honestly, like your tailbone. A lot of hockey pants that are lower level don't really have good tailbone protection, but as you go up, they might have like a separate pad there for it. Also get kind of more customizable options, which very important if you're tall. If you're super tall and need hockey pants, you probably do need to step up to a little bit higher level so you can get hockey pants that have, usually they're denoted by like a plus and then a number size, because it's like whatever line of hockey pants they have, and they come in, their standard lengths. But then as you kind of move up, you can get like plus 2 inches, plus 3 inches to get them just a little bit longer so they actually fit you properly and where you want them. Because you want to get hockey pants that, again, not only fit around you, and it's important to know how you're going to pair. It's important to know how you're going to wear hockey pants. If you're someone that's going to wear suspenders, I like suspenders for my hockey pants, then they don't really need to fit around like your waist as well. They can kind of be a little bit large and float there with the suspenders. But if you're someone that's going to tie them off with a belt, you're going to want to make sure that you can get that belt cinched down properly so they stay on. And then you also want to have them fall on your leg as far down as you want them to be. Some people like a very long hockey pant that kind of goes over the knee. Some people like it above the knee. That's very much a personal preference to have there. So it varies by brand and by line of pants of what those are. But this is a case of everything kind of goes together. So where you want your pants to fall probably has to do with where your shin guards are going to be at. Like, do you have really tall shin guards? If you do, you might want shorter pants. If you have kind of shorter shin guards that just stop right at the knee, you might want some longer pants to cover that. So you kind of have to look at everything holistically, everything as a huge unit that all goes together of how things work. And finally, on kind of specific gear, we're going to talk really generally for goalies out there from a complete non-goalie. What I've seen is that a lot of people that start playing goalie as an adult, what they'll do is they'll either buy or borrow pads, gloves, and blockers, and maybe a helmet from somebody else, and then kind of buy their own skates, and usually have to buy their own like chest protector. And then if they want other stuff like knee pads or any of the other padding and stuff that goalies have, usually find a place to buy that stuff. And that's kind of how they start off with, is usually with some borrowed gear or buying it very cheaply from somebody else that's getting rid of their gear. Then if they decide they're going to stick in goal, and again, talking as like adults that start playing hockey, because a lot of the adult goalies start playing hockey, you have either the path of people that played goalie as a kid, have all their gear and everything still, and just follow through with it, or people that decided to play hockey as an adult and either were a skater their whole time and now are switching to goalie, or just jumping right into hockey for the first time as a goalie. And so if people then kind of decide that they're staying in goal, it's either buying their own stuff and, giving back stuff they borrowed, or buying that stuff off the person if it fits them well and that person wants to get rid of it. And usually getting used stuff. I think most goalies I know usually buy the bulk of stuff is used gear a lot of times. And I know there's a lot of stuff with goalie gear, like with skater gear, that you have to try. So there's different pad sizes, different pad styles out there. I know like with your glove, there's like different breaks on the glove for how you hold your hand. And I don't know how you would know any of that stuff without trying different goalie gear and actually kind of like trying playing goalie in the gear. Like, I know you can try stuff on and make sure it's generally right, but without actually playing goalie, it's kind of hard to know if that stuff is correctly. And I do know that there is a very large goalie community out there. I know even where I'm at, which isn't the hugest hockey market by any means in the US, there's a pretty big goalie community of people that are, you have the people that are consistently buying new stuff for themselves and just getting new all the time and upgrading stuff and getting new colors and all those things, and then selling off their old stuff. So there's always kind of this community out there for goalies of people selling stuff, people buying stuff, people looking for things. And I feel like once you kind of get into that, you can find a lot of this stuff to borrow or buy from other goalies until you find exactly what you want and either get settled with that or wind up going and buying this stuff for yourself. So that's kind of all I have to say about goalie gear and how that seems to work from my perspective as a non-goalie. All right. So kind of the gear you're looking for. You know sort of the price idea generally of what you're looking for. So what kind of options do you have out there? Well, one option that you have for finding gear is pro stock. You hear people talk about it all the time. Pro stock this, pro stock that. People love to talk about that. What is pro stock? So pro stock is kind of one of two ways that it works. Is either one you have gear that is specifically from a particular player, like it was gloves that they have used or intended to use, or skates or whatever, sticks, stuff like that. Or it's kind of like the generic backlog of equipment from a team. So teams do carry like extra stuff. So teams will have like, a number of gloves in their team colors in various sizes, or generic shin pads that they have, or something like that. So you kind of have it from one of two things is where pro stock comes from. Now with pro stock gear, it is usually higher end models of stuff. And it's pros using it, so they're not going to have the cheap stuff. So it's usually higher end equipment to begin with. You can find some odd sizes there, or odd size combos. Pro stock is the place you can find. It's the only place I know of that you can really find if you need like two different size skates. Sometimes you can find them with pro stock. Also find pads in weird like 1/2 inch sizes. Usually most pads are done in regular inches. Like shin pads, very common sizes are like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 inch. Whereas pro stock, you can find like a 12.5 inch pad because they've adjusted it to fit with that. So it is a place to find some oddball sizes if you need them. Editing Roz just dropping in here. Something I forgot to mention with pro stock to definitely be aware of if you are buying it is there are relabeled things for pro stock. So you might have a stick, especially is very popular with this, be a different line of stick. I mean, same brand, but a different line, but have a label on it to look like a different stick, because pro players sometimes have contracts that they're supposed to be using the latest line of sticks, but they don't like it, so they use an older model. So something to watch out for with pro stock, again, read descriptions, look at pictures, is it might be labeled and have the graphics of something different than what it actually is. The other thing you'll find with pro stock is extra customizations. So you'll find like gloves with extra padding on the back, for blocking shots, or cuffs removed, or extensions put on, like I said, on pants or on other pads. So if you are going to buy something pro stock, if you can't look at it in person, make sure you look at pictures very closely and read descriptions to see if there's any of that kind of stuff on there and if that's what you want. You can also find pro stock stuff that has been made lighter because that's what the person wanted. You won't generally find this level of customization if it is, like I said, like kind of the generic back stock from a team. But if it's for a specific player, you can find padding removed in certain places. Maybe a player doesn't like the thumb guard on his gloves, so that plastic's out of there, which maybe you love, maybe you hate. Maybe it could be helpful to you, but maybe you don't want that protection gone. So something, again, if you're going to get pro stock stuff, you can get some great deals there, but look at it closely. If you can't see it in person, make sure you look at pictures, make sure you read descriptions. You can find, like I said, great deals on most pro stock things. And now with pro stock stuff, not everything is new. A lot of it can be new, but you can also have used. So again, if you're buying pro stock, make sure if you have it in person, look at it closely, check it out, make sure it's in good enough shape for you. Stuff like helmets and things, make sure they're still good and not worn out. And if you're buying it sight unseen and you're buying it from like a website, make sure you look at all the pictures closely, read all the descriptions, especially if it's used, to kind of see how used it is. Because there are people out there that buy pro stock equipment from players, not to use, but as like display pieces because it's somebody's gloves that they had. So if you're not doing that and you're buying it to use, make sure it is usable equipment. Speaking of used versus new, that's kind of the other debate you have to have just for equipment in general, no matter what you're buying. So used stuff is really great, cheap, and depending on where you're at, can be quite plentiful around you. But again, like I said, for pro stock stuff, you have to look at it. You have to look if they're worn out, if there's stuff that needs to get replaced or soon to be replaced, if it's got a problem with it, is it easy to fix? You know, if you find just the absolute best pair of shin guards used at a great deal, but the Velcro is all stretched out and just kind of not usable, can you still use the shin guards? Do you mind wearing like little shin sleeves to hold them up, or maybe some sewing skills to put on some new Velcro? Then, hey, you might have found a great deal, but make sure you check all that stuff out. If you find gloves that you absolutely love, these are the perfect gloves, but the palms are just beat to crap or missing, is it worth it to go get them sent out and repalmed, or buy one of the repalming kits you can do yourself to have those gloves? Is it worth it? Something to think about. And if you're doing that, does it really save money for you? Again, that's kind of the tough thing with buying used stuff. Also, buying anything used, make sure you clean it really good. Don't be gross. You know, most of your gear can go into the washing machine, so you can definitely do that. You know, even if you're someone that doesn't wash your gear regularly, which is disgusting, this is the time to make sure it gets washed really well. Now, if you're buying like used skates, yeah, you can't really wash them like that, but you can definitely clean them out. You can definitely spray them out with different like sprays you'd use for shoes and stuff like that to get them as clean as you can, and clean the outsides and everything like that. So you kind of know what you have. You notice if there's problems with them, you can see what it is. So definitely just clean any used gear you get way more than you think you need to. Now, used sticks. This can be kind of a weird thing, because sticks can actually wear out without breaking. And what that means by that is the flex on them doesn't become as pointed as where it's supposed to be. So if it's a like low kick stick, it might not be as much because it might get a little too flexy above that. They can also just be not as whippy as they're supposed to be overall. So sticks can wear out, but used sticks can be a really good deal for people. It's a great way, like I said, especially for beginners, to try different lengths of stick, different curves, different handedness. Used sticks can be a great way to try all this stuff out. And the other thing you can do with sticks, if you buy a used stick, try it out, decide you don't love something about it, that can become your beater. Be the stick that you go practice out, you know, if you have an outdoor rink to go play on somewhere, or a pond, or practice stick handling in the driveway and it gets chewed up, use that stick. There you go. Boom. Easy. Used skates, like I said, great place to start. You can find better deals on used skates if you have smaller feet. For any adults out there that have, honestly, if you have kid-sized feet even, like I know some people do, you can get some great deals on skates, because kids will get really nice skates, use them for a year, and then grow out of them, and then they sell them to the hockey store, and you can find some really cheap skates that are in awesome shape. So good on you if you have small feet. Used helmets, tricky, very tricky to do. Personally, I'd avoid used helmets because, like I said, helmet is one of the things, probably to me, the most important thing to get, and the piece of gear that I care most about being in the best shape. So used helmets, I would avoid. You can get them. You can find the ones that are in decent shape, but I'd steer clear of those. I do have a video that is all about cleaning your hockey gear. I will link that. So if you do buy some used stuff and you don't know what to do, I'll show you how I clean my stuff. So you're thinking, hey, used gear sounds great. I don't know where to get it. I don't know where to find it. I think the best places to look for used gear, one is the chain Played Again Sports. I know they are across the US and in Canada. They have lots and lots of used stuff. And the quality and variety of selection is very dependent upon the area that the store is in of what they're going to have. So this might be a case where if you're in somewhere where they don't really have a great selection of hockey gear at your local Played Again, but you really want to get some used stuff, go to maybe take a weekend trip to somewhere that's a little bit further that has a larger hockey community to find some stuff. It might be worth it and save you a decent amount of money. So it might be worth checking that out. Also, like any of the used stuff, the time of year when you're looking definitely makes a difference. Really during the middle of the hockey season, there's probably not going to be as many people selling used gear. Whereas at the very end of the season, after, kind of kids hockey's done, their gear is probably going on sale if they've outgrown it or getting rid of it, or people are just done playing hockey and they sell their gear. That's usually when you can find more and more used gear. Or also, honestly, a really good time is as you're getting into hockey season, because that's when people are realizing, hey, stuff doesn't fit right anymore, or we need to have different color gloves or whatever like that, selling that gear to buy the other gear that they need to get. So it does cycle through when there's an abundance of used gear out there. So keep your eyes open. Another great place for used gear is kind of the online marketplaces. So, your Craigslist or your Kijiji, depending on if you're in the US or Canada, and Facebook Marketplace. I see lots and lots of hockey gear on Facebook Marketplace. Not just single pieces of gear, but whole sets of hockey gear out there. So that's another great place to look. And finally, probably I think, granddaddy of buying used gear online, Sideline Swap. It's gotten huge over the last couple of years. They have a massive variety of things on there. It's a great place to look for stuff. There are definitely deals to be had on all these places. But again, you're buying it sight unseen, so make sure you look at pictures very closely, read descriptions very closely, and ask questions to make sure it is getting what you want, because you can't touch the stuff. So you have your hockey gear, you have a full set of gear, you've been playing hockey for a while, now you want to upgrade stuff. What do you upgrade? What is kind of the smart way to spend the money for upgrades? I think number one, if you have any gear that is now falling apart, or the pads are getting borderline not useful as pads, that's the first things to upgrade, always. Secondly, if you have any gear that is wearing out abnormally quickly, so if you have shin guards that for some reason are taking a beating, or the knees on them are just getting destroyed, if you have elbow pads that are getting beat up really badly because you keep falling backwards on your elbows, replace those. That's stuff you should be getting. If you need new steel for your skates, because maybe you bought used skates and you've been skating a bunch and you've gotten your skates sharpened a lot and now you don't have a lot of steel left, upgrade the steel on them. If you're curious about upgrading your steel, I do have a whole episode talking about blade tech steels as a great upgrade path. For beginners, if you've been playing for a while now and you're falling or you're repeatedly getting hurt in the same spot, noticing something is not getting properly covered with your padding, great time to upgrade to get something that is going to cover that area. Then I would get into skates. When you feel like your skates are starting to break or not hold you in as properly as you would like them to, and you feel like they're not glued to your foot like they should be, that's a good time to upgrade skates. Gloves. Not really critical to upgrade gloves, and unless, there's no padding left or they're all cut up or beat up or something like that. But they're a super fun upgrade to do because you can get different styles and different colors. So it's more of a fun upgrade usually with gloves, unless there's something drastically wrong with them. Your shin and elbow pads are probably going to take the most beatings of lower level beer leagues, just because of falling and people falling in front of you and getting hit with sticks and pucks and all kinds of stuff like that. So keep an eye on those. Pants, shoulder pads, honestly, unless they start to fall apart, probably good to keep those for a very, very long time. Now, if you're looking for what I consider to be some good budget-friendly brands of hockey gear out there, I'm going to list off a bunch of these. I will have everything linked so you can go directly to them, so you don't have to write all this down. Hockeytron has a lot of kind of budget-friendly hockey gear and lots of good deals. Verbero has some very affordable hockey gear. I actually wear Verbero pants because I find them to be super comfortable. Hockey Stick Man. They have the blackout line of gear and of sticks. Very, very affordable sticks out there that are very nice. Pro Stock Hockey. It's Pro Stock stuff. It's a great way to find kind of oddball things, like I said, for Pro Stock. That's a great resource. All black hockey sticks. Again, They have some gear out there as well that is cheap, but they also have very cheap hockey sticks that I use. I think they're really nice sticks. Swift Hockey, cheap hockey sticks. No Name Hockey Sticks, cheap hockey sticks. Pro Stock Hockey Sticks, hockey sticks. And kind of bigger brands, but ones that you can actually find some pretty good deals on. Sherwood and Warrior brand sticks are kind of more bigger known brands out there, but they do tend to have some very cheap deals on like the previous year model sticks, which is a great way if you are going into a hockey store and buying kind of a bigger brand stick. Look for last year model sticks. Probably gonna be just about as good as the current stick that's out there, but discounted. A lot of sticks don't get discounted that much, but for some reason, Warrior and Sherwood tend to get discounted more than other ones. To sum everything up, some final thoughts. Don't buy gear because it looks cool, except for maybe gloves. It's there to protect you, so make sure it can do that first. I hate to tell people, but buying pro stock gear or expensive gear really doesn't equate to pro level results of your playing. Honestly, a lot of times it's more the opposite. You buy really expensive gear, it's more of a hindrance to lower level players and it hurts them. Comfort first, protection second, weight last. That's a great mantra for all of your hockey, everything that you buy. And finally, if it hurts to wear, you won't play better. So if you think getting the really fancy helmet that gives you a headache every time, it's not going to help. All right. I hope this helped you out. If you're a beginner, I hope to help map out where you should be spending your money on hockey gear. If you've been playing for a while, I hope this helps build out your upgrade path for your gear so you know what to save up your money to buy next. I'd love to hear about that. If it did, drop me a line. As always, you can go check out thebeerleaguer.com for all the links for everything in this episode, plus all past episodes. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. Catch you in the next one.